We here back to bring you another broadcast. KUCB Radio. We're located right here in Des Moines, Iowa. Our motto is "Truth is the wealth of freedom," and we communicate to educate and organize. I want to give you a little background information about KUCB Radio before we get into this broadcast. KUCB Radio was founded in the early 80s, 81, 82. Ms. Joanne Cheatham, Brother Charles Knox were the founders. We were on the air for about 20 years. And we actually was on the air for 24 hours, KUCB radio station. We had a format to try to serve the community. That was our main thrust, to make sure that we had a format to serve the community. I had the honor and pleasure of working with Sister Hada Shamir for about 20 years. We did a show called International Phone Call Hour. Also, we did a weekly show called the African Liberation Hour, where in both shows, we interviewed and talked to so many people doing those two shows and doing that long stretch of 20-some years. So we decided we would take a radio station. We actually have a web page, a website called KUCB Radio, where we try to feature the same format as what we had when we had KUCB Radio. And so even the videos that you see us extend into so many different areas, we try to stick with the kind of videos as close as we can to the format that we had at KUCB Radio. So that's what we try to do, inshallah. Today, we're going to talk about my subject matter is called The Roots of the Holidays in America. And you're going to hear me talk about so much to bring all of this together. But that's the main thrust, the root of the holidays in America. And also you'll hear me talk about the meaning of justice in Islam. I'm going to tie all this, inshallah, if it be the will of Allah, I'm going to try to tie all of this together. One of the things that we see when we talk about the meaning of justice in Islam, I just want to mention a couple points to you. Number one, placing things in their rightful place in justice in Islam. That's what the meaning of justice in Islam. Placing things in their rightful place. Number two, it is also means of giving others equal treatment. That's the other part of justice in Islam, is number two. It also is meaning giving others equal treatment. And number three, in Islam, justice is also a moral virtue and an attribute of the human personality, as it is in the Western culture. And number four, the importance of justice in the Holy Quran, Surah 16, ayat 90, Allah tells us, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allah commands justice and fair dealing. This is what Allah commands. Allah commands justice and fair dealing. This is in the Holy Quran, as I said, Surah 16, ayat 90. And so, as we operate from that premise, that this is something that Allah commands, He commands justice and fair dealing. See, Allah commands that this is the same Allah that created the heavens and the earth, created every single thing. So if He's commanding um, justice and fair dealing. That means that we have to be just, you know. Also, the Prophet Sallallahu in his last farewell address that he gave, he emphasized the fact in Islam there's no black over white, no white over black, Arab over non-Arab. He talked about the equal treatment in Islam, that one race was not over another race. And so now, as we talk about the root of the holidays in America, if I take you back to say 1940, 1950, and in this country, once again, Allah is commanding um, us to practice justice and fair dealing. But if I carry you back to 1940, 1950 in America, and you see where there was no justice, there was no fair dealing, because they had a law called segregation, which simply means that as black people, as poor people, you had no rights. You had no rights at all. They had a law into effect. This is not Allah's commandments. This is man's commandments that he made up to make one race appear like it's superior to another race by having a law called segregation. It simply meant that blacks didn't have no rights to public accommodation at all. Now, Allah commands justice and fair dealings. This is not Allah's commandment. This is man-made laws that he created to oppress and to make one race seem like it was superior to another race. That's what we're talking about. So this is what happened in segregation. Any public facility, if it was transportation, a public city bus, if you was talking about a public restroom, if you was talking about a public drinking fountain, all of these areas, black people and poor people had no fair, no justice, no fair dealing at all. It was superiority, inferiority. That was the segregation. That's what it was. So as we look at this, we in 2019, and we look at this now. Let me give you one other example of Allah commanding, once again. This is Surah 16, Ayat 90. Allah is commanding, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allah is commanding justice and fair dealing. Let me give you another story of that. Look, this has to do with the root of these holidays in America. Thanksgiving came about the settlers coming in the 1600s, 1700s, and the indigenous people tried to offer them and teach them how to survive a hard, cold winter, which they did. And in turn, the settlers massacred and gave the indigenous people blankets with chicken pox and gave them disease and massacred them. That's how Thanksgiving came about. The governor of Massachusetts declared it to be Thanksgiving after the settlers, the white settlers who came in, had massacred the indigenous people. Then they declared it Thanksgiving. That's how Thanksgiving came about. Then you bring on the heels of that Black Friday. Black Friday came about where they put the slaves on an auction block and sold them for a certain price. They call it Black Friday. Then you bring you roll in the holidays, and this is the root of the holidays in America. All of them has something to do with not any kind of justice, any kind of fair dealing. It has to do with profit. It has to do with making money. It has to do with making one race superior to another race. That's what these holidays have to do that we're in right now. That's what it's all about. It's not about any kind of justice. It's not about any kind of fair dealing. It's about superiority, inferiority, making money, making profit for America, for these companies, for these businesses, for these merchants. That's what this is about. And so the other story I want to tell you too, this lie that has been perpetuated, and it's being taught in most schools too. It's being taught to young people that somehow this person named Columbus discovered America. Well, the hypocritical part and the disbelief part about that is you had the indigenous people who were already present in America, and the fact that on the on the ships that Columbus had, there were Muslim navigators who had traveled to China and traveled all over the world, so they knew where they were going. Columbus wasn't so smart, wasn't so brilliant that he discovered America. And once again, the when we talk about Allah commanding justice and fair dealing, there's no justice in telling a lie about Columbus discovered a place where the indigenous people were already here. There's no justice about that. There's no fair dealing about this. See? And there's a Islamic scholar by the name of Abdul Quick who has a book out called Deeper Roots. Deeper Roots, it discloses and it dismisses myths about Columbus discovering America. It dispels all of that in the book called Deeper Roots by Abdul Quick. He's an Islamic scholar, studied, PhD. He has a small book out called Deeper Roots, and he has maps, he has diagrams, he has a whole works in there. So it dispels this whole thing about Columbus discovering America. But this is a lie that's being taught to our young people, to our kids, and they publicize this actually in most of the textbooks. Once again, this is at the root of these holidays in America. You know, this is at the root of them. And so we wanted to make sure that we put this out. We're going to encourage you and ask you, if you catch this video, we ask you to pass it on to many places, put it in many locations where the young people, where the youth can watch this. Let me also move to another area and talk about El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz. Most of you probably know him by the name by Malcolm X. After he went and made his Hajj, he returned with the name El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz. And so Brother Malcolm talked about the treatment that he received when he traveled throughout Mecca and Medina and his two holy cities that he went to and performing his Hajj, and the treatment that he got. He talked about the people that he prayed next to and people that he consulted with, people he talked to. They didn't treat him any different like he was treated in America. So he saw the difference between the two places of Medina and Mecca. And he saw that Islam was the thing that didn't have any racism, didn't deal with racism. That's what he saw. That's what he recognized in his travel. And he talked about that America could take a lesson from the treatment that he received traveling throughout Mecca and Medina and to the Muslim world, and the treatment of Islam and how it treats and how there's no racism, because Allah commands in the Holy Quran, Surah 16, Ayat 90, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Allah commands justice and fair dealing. He commands that. So this is what Malcolm was talking about when he said that America could learn a lesson from Islam by the fact of the justice and the fair dealing and the treatment. See, because there's no white over black, black over white, Arab over non-Arab. We don't have that. There's no room for that. Because if you're going to make your Hajj, you can't be worried about trying to look around and see what color the person is next to you. Because if you're thinking that way, in your mind that is that way, then first of all you lost your Hajj, and first of all you made a trip all that way for simply nothing, because you will lose all your good deeds if your mindset is like that. And so this is what Malcolm was saying, that America could learn a lesson of from this, and also could practice this, because this would be a cure. This could be a cure to America's problem of racism. He was specifically talking about racism in America. And once again, the root of these holidays is infected with this level of superiority, inferiority, racism, the whole gamut. That's what it's infected with. So um, this is something that I just wanted to share with you this morning, because I think it's an important subject. And see, what's important about this is our young people. So many of our youth and so many of our young people don't know about this part of history, don't know about this. And so what they are being taught in most school systems, actually what's in the educational books, it perpetuates this lie about Columbus discovering America. Oftentimes it doesn't talk about the segregation that happened in America. Um, and so young people oftentimes they don't have any idea, and they don't know about these things. So how would they know about these kind of things that have happened in America, because they have no idea about them. You know. Excuse me for that little pause there. But the young people and the youth have no idea about these things in America. How would they know? Because understand, you guys, that in the history books they're not telling the truth about what has happened. They are perpetuating the lie and carrying that forth to teach the young people not the truth about what has happened, but they're perpetuating the lie about the things that have happened in history which are not true. And nowadays, you don't see no discussion. Maybe in the colleges you might see it, but as far as the schools, so many of the schools don't talk about the root of the holidays in America. They don't talk about segregation. They don't talk about the other side of America. They just want to talk about one side of America, and they never want to talk about the justice that's supposed to be in America. There's supposed to be justice. What we are seeing is so much of injustice. That's what we are seeing. But justice is supposed to be fair. You're supposed to have fair dealing with justice. See, justice is not supposed to discriminate based on color or race or creed or where somebody come from or what class they are. But when you have injustice, it does all of that. See, and so once again, we are just talking about this morning the root of the holidays in America, and how all of that is tied into segregation. It's tied into the history. I mean, it's tied into, even as we speak in 2019, it's still tied into so much that is going on in the day's time. It's still tied in that. I said to you, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, Brother Malcolm, talked about that America could learn a lesson because of the treatment in Islam, where you cannot be practicing racism. And Allah commands, He commands this from the Holy Quran. He commands justice and fair dealing. So America, that's something America needs to learn. Understand, in America, a system of segregation was created. This didn't come from Allah. This is not Allah's commandment. This didn't come from Allah, period. Where this came from is man coming up with a segregation law to make one race be superior, make the other race feel inferior. That's where this come from. And then once the law is put into practice, then people go from that on treating people based on the law. See, if you wanna make someone feel inferior, now think about this, y'all. Think about it. This is a serious piece, and I'm getting ready to just kind of explore a little bit. Think about this. If you create a law that says segregation is a rule of the day, then you have to go a step beyond. It's one thing to say segregation and you create a law, but then you have to make the people feel inferior who you created the law for. So if the law has been created for black people, for poor people in America, then you go a step beyond and say, okay, these people are not considered to be human beings. They're inferior. And the reason they're inferior, we have to have a segregation law to say they don't have a right to ride the public bus. If they do have a right to ride the public bus, look, to make them feel more inferior, you tell them that they can't ride in the front of the bus, they have to ride in the back of the bus. That's number one on the public transportation. Number two, on the public restrooms. To make people feel more inferior, you tell them there's a public restroom inside of this building, but they can't go inside of this building and use the public restroom. They have to go behind the building and use the public restroom, out in the weeds, in wherever behind the building. That's more inferiority. The next level of inferiority is that, look, we have a public water fountain in this building, but black people and poor people are not allowed to drink directly from the water fountain. They have to get a cup to drink from the water fountain. That's to make the inferiority superiority, that's to make it stick even more. Because you're telling the person that you're not, because you're not human, you're not allowed to drink right from the water fountain. You have to use a cup. The cup signifies the inferiority complex. And so guess what? After a while, the person begins to develop a group of people, a race of people, begins to develop an inferiority complex, thinking that maybe we're not human, thinking that maybe it's something wrong with us because a law has been created called segregation. As I said once again, Allah didn't command those laws to be created. Allah commands He commands justice and He demands fair dealing. This is man-made law creating a segregation law to create a system of inferiority, superiority. That's what that is. That's what all that is. So when we talk about the root of these holidays in America, over the years, what people have projected and what people have encouraged and spoke out about and protest about was calling boycotts on these American holidays, because, as we always say, the American holidays has nothing to do with poor people and black people and oppressed people in this country. It has nothing to do. And sometimes I like to give the example. Look, if you say July the 4th, 1776, how does that have anything to do with oppressed people, with poor people and black people, when in fact, July the 4th, 1776, you still had slavery? So how is that independence? And independence for who? And independence about what? How is that Independence Day? Maybe Independence Day for a certain segment of the population, but the poor people, the oppressed people, the black people, there's no independence because they still had slavery going on. So you see how hypocritical that is? You see how that's a big lie, because on the one hand they say this, but on the other hand it's not true. It's falsehood, see? So that's what we're talking about. The hypocritical part of it, you know? How is it you're gonna have people not allowed to vote based on their color? See, not allowed to vote based on their color. No other reason why. But because people are not allowed to vote in 1950 because there's been a segregation law that's been put in practice, been created, put into law, saying that a certain race of people are superior, and the other race of people that want to practice their right because Allah has commanded justice and fair dealing, they want to practice their right to vote, but you have a segregation law that's being created to say these people are not human, and because they're not human, they have no rights. They have no rights at all. Public accommodation, no rights at all. To vote, no rights at all. So once again, this is the system of segregation that's been created, and people have to realize, understand, this system was created not by Almighty Allah. Almighty Allah created the heavens and the earth. He created everybody to be fair, equal, and just. But what man come along and did was to create a segregation law to make one race superior, to make the other race inferior, then began to put things in practice to make that race feel like they're inferior, and actually to create an inferiority complex. That's what has happened. KUCB Radio, we communicate to educate and organize. Truth is the wealth of freedom. We are simply talking this morning on this video about the root of the holidays in America and how it has created this system that we have today's time that we have in place. That's what we're calling. This is our discussion. We ask you to, inshallah, share this video with as many people as you can. We will try to place it in as many places as we can. It's extremely important that you try to share with the youth, and the young people maybe can benefit and get something out of this, because the historical part of the roots of the holidays in America, it takes us all the way back to segregation. It takes us all the way back to the all of the falsehood that has been told about these holidays. If it's Columbus Day, if it's Thanksgiving, if it's Christmas, it doesn't make any difference. What all of these American holidays, all it is to create falsehood, to misguide and misdirect and brainwash people, and also especially brainwash our youth and our young people, because the lie that's been taught and been published in the school books is not the truth about what has happened. There's a dirty truth about America that they don't want to tell that side. They just want to perpetuate this lie and perpetuate this falsehood, but they don't want to tell the real truth, the dirty truth about the holidays of America and what really has happened. Once again, I will close out by saying this. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allah commands justice and fair dealing. That comes from Allah, not from man. This comes from Allah. So justice is supposed to be fair dealings. It's supposed to be equal treatment. See, what this system that these people have created is injustice and not fair dealing and not equal treatment. Equal treatment for certain people, certain class of people, where you stay at, your class and your nationality. That's the kind of treatment they have created. So once again, KUCB Radio, our motto is truth is the wealth of freedom. We communicate to educate and organize.